Hi guys, good morning. It is El Trader Goof coming at you with another weekly watch list. Uh, Reminder, this is just a couple names that I'm looking at. I'm not a professional of any sort. Always do your own DD. Um, these are just some of the things that I'm looking at going into this week. Some ideas for you to do your own DD in case by all means, right? So let's go ahead and jump right into the first one, right? So the first one that I will be looking at going into this week, it's going to be Sweet Green, right? So Sweet Green is one of those companies that, we all know about it now here in the States. Was founded back in 2016, went public in 2021, right? So hasn't really been trading it as much, just for about 5 years or so, right? Currently has about 253 stores. Looking to expand to 1,000 stores within the upcoming years, if given, right? With that being said, did beat revenue and growth here in the first half of 2025. They do have a average price target ranging from roughly from 15 up to 23. So that, we're trading well below that, leaving us potentially room for maybe an 80% surge to the upside, right? Within the next months, if given. So initially, first things first is that based off this daily time frame, we can see that Sweet Green has been in a strong little downtrend, right? So, but with that being said, with that strong downtrend here, we can sort of see that it's sort of attempting to sort of break out of this daily downward trend here that we have, right? We can see that this 18, roughly these 12s, is holding nicely as a nice little area of support here given, right? Now we can see also that move down has now filled this gap from last year, right? From roughly the end of February here. That's where we're seeing where we have bottomed out here throughout the day here. We filled that gap down, and now it just seems to be holding roughly this 1186.88/12 area as a nice area of support here, right? With that, also, we're attempting to break out of that downtrend, now trading above that 5 EMA, 20 EMA, right? With that as well, we can see that this 15, 20/30 is having some nice little area of confluence trying to break above, right? So going into this week, of course, that's something that we're going to be looking at to see if we can break above roughly those 15.25s. It's going to be an area that we want to see us break above, right? And of course, if we do get that move upside, we want to see if we can maintain roughly these 14s based off this hourly time frame, right? So that's an area that we're going to be looking at to see if we can hold here. Initially here, this is going to be a very good, whether it's day trade, swing trade, but initially leaning more on the swing trade side, because initially we would love to see us break above this 1520 and sort of start to test up here into these 20s area here, guys. So that's something that we're going to be watching here if given in the next couple weeks or days, whatever it might be, whatever the market decides to give us for on Sweet Green here, guys. So mind you that, just keep an eye on that. We want to see us maintain that 14 area if we do have buyers coming in, right? If we do not hold that 14 area, it's a possibility that we can go lower down back into these 12s slash 13s. So just, of course, be aware of that as well. Next stock that we're going to be looking at is going to be NUBB. UBB is going to be something that we're also going to be looking at going into this week. One thing that I was looking at that I was liking here when I was reading into all this is that NUVB, yes, the daily chart, we can see we did have a nice little sell-off here, right? But overall, we want to be able to see why we have had this sell-off, right? But overall, just because the chart might seem like that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, right? So one thing that we do notice here on NUVB is that these 150 areas, roughly that 155 was an area where it was respected. It bounced off of it, making a double bottom. As we can see, one over here, then had that nice push up here, right? Now, with that being said, of course, here on the daily, now this next area that seems to be respecting is this 180 area, right? We can see over here, tapped over here, bounced off that 180. Same thing over here, right? After we got this double bottom of that 150s, boom, went up, boom, right? So we got that, boom, over here, then over here, this bottom over here, and then bottom over here, right? So we know that we sort of seeing some buying here as well, right? So going into this week, we want to see us hold that 180 area, and area that we want to see us break above is going to be roughly this 215 area here to possibly see some momentum here to the upside. Now, if that 215 is broken, there is a chance that we can go ahead and start to go ahead test this 250 area here upcoming next. What caught my attention was that this overall stock, the top 5 shareholders own roughly 51% of the company, right? So insiders have just been buying in heavily on this. So let me go ahead and give you sort of a rundown of what percentage these buyers have, right? So roughly 51.9% is institutional, right? Another 25.1 is going to be more of individual insiders. Then you have GP, which is going to be roughly that 13.4, and then you have VC and PE, which is going to be private firms, roughly a 7.63%, right? So all these percentages is what the shareholders have a percentage on about this company, right? Seems like a lot, right? Next thing to do keep in mind is that the largest shareholder of this is going to be the CEO. He has around 18% of the overall shares, right? So with that being said, that is something that we definitely want to keep an eye, right? Because the CEO might have 18%, and then the second and third shareholders have roughly a percentage of 15% and 7.6%, right? So with all these numbers, right, it seems like a lot, but also mind you that yes, insiders might be buying in as well and loading up, but also we have to be considerate about other things in the TA, right, in the technical analysis. On the daily time frame, we can see that we are clearly in a downward channel, right? So that's one thing to also keep an eye out, right? So just because people have been buying in doesn't necessarily mean it's good as well, but it is something to keep an eye out on as well. So because at the same time, yes, they might have a large sum of shares, so be aware that if those shares for them do go up in price and value, that they can sell as well, all of them at once, or just divide it however they want, right? So that's something to also keep an eye out on as well. But overall, initially for us to be able to play this, we want to see us get breaking above that 215 and then holding roughly these 180s if given, right? So we do get that 215 break roughly initially. What we're looking at is sort of go ahead testing up into those 250 areas and possibly up into those 270s area if given here. Even on a weekly time frame, we can see that channel, right, holding. So initially that 215 is going to be roughly an area that we're going to be watching here for this particular stock here, guys. So next one that we're going to be looking at is going to be ARDX. ARDX is going to be another one of these beaten down bio stocks, right? So despite them being down or just being down a good percentage, right? We do see a couple ideas or even a couple opportunities for us to be able to capitalize here on this name. Um, so let's go ahead and dive into it, right? So ADX roughly has a price target ranging from 1250 um, as we state right now. So we do still have that potential upside, right? With a price target ranging from roughly that 12.50 area. We are trading well below that, right? We're trading roughly around well below sub fives. So that's something that we can be mindful here as well, right? So because of the fact that they do have a higher price target, maybe this has some momentum here to the upside, right? One thing that we do know is that the company does show strong revenue growth potential, but faces significant profitability and operational change here for this company, right? So something to also keep an eye out on that. Decent insider buying in the past couple of days, so that might signal that we might get this push up and possibly fill this gap to the upside, right? So with that being said, that's something that we're going to be looking at going into this week because we have had decent insider buying. We've had this loan amendment that got also that they secured. So something that also we want to keep an eye out because with that being said, we have a gap up, we have insiders buying. So we don't know if they're buying because something's coming up or if they have some potential news or FDA thing that they might be waiting for. But overall, we're playing this based off what we have dug up, what we have been able to see. So we can see here, daily time frame, right? Roughly over here, this 320s held up, had a nice pop up, and then now this roughly this 349/50 is having a nice little area of respect and holding here as support for here, right? With that being said, here we can see that last week we got above that 5 EMA and 20 EMA, right? So now we're trading above that, right? So with that being said, we know buyers are here, right? Buyers are here. They're trying to possibly see a potential bigger move to the upside, right? So with that being said, what's one thing that we're seeing? We see a gap, and then we see that 200 EMA, right? That gap or that 200 EMA is literally in the middle of that gap that we have here on this daily gap. So we have two things that might act here as a magnet for buyers who can potentially push this here to the upside, right? So that's one thing that we're going to be watching here this week. We want to see us break above that 434/435 area to be able to potentially position ourselves to be able to play this potential move here or this potential gap fill here to this upside here, guys. So that's something that we're going to be watching here there for ADX. We can see here how nice little uptrend, and here in pre-market seems like we're holding roughly these 420s, right? So if ADRX can overall hold above these fours, that's going to be more the merrier for us, right? It's going to be more on our side if we can hold these four areas to potentially see that gap be filled here to the upside here, guys. So that's something that we're going to definitely be watching here going into this week. Next thing that we're going to go ahead and review is nice little tech name, right? Nice little tech name here. Apple. Apple, we can see how we have just been in a nice little channel of what seems to be building up as a pendant here, right? Let's go ahead here. So that's what we're seeing here. Sort of seeing, let's say more. You could probably say it's more of a ascending triangle, right? Trying to break out here on Apple based off this daily time frame. Trying to break above and hold above that 200 EMA. So that's something that we're going to be looking at this week. Is we want to see us break above roughly into this 215s to be able to see a move higher and potentially test up into these 220 slash 225s area. And the reason why I say 220 is because that's going to be roughly the bottom of this gap, right? From here. You guys can see that. So if we do break into those 215s, initially what I would love to see is go test into those 220s, then go test into those 225s on Apple, right? Now if we look at the 1 hour time frame, we can sort of see if we do break above Friday's high of 214.65, that's initially something I would be looking at to potentially be positioning myself for calls or either comments here with that first target of roughly 215 or even up into those 220s here, guys. And mind you, with Apple, you do have 215, 217.5, and 220. So you roughly have 3 options to choose from if we do get that pop up. And remember, we want to see buyers push up with momentum. But other than that, if we lose these two, I would say roughly these 210s, 211s, then I won't be surprised if we start to see us start to push more lower, roughly into these 210s, 208s on Apple here, guys. So remember, there's always 2 sides of the markets to always be mindful of and watch out. And one other thing that I'm just gonna go ahead and throw in here is going to be Snowflake. Snowflake, I reviewed this a couple weeks ago. And one thing that I will say is that it seems like it just wants to continue to make new highs, right? So we talked about it last time how Snowflake has just been, ever since we hit this nice little bottom here of 120s, just been on a nice strong uptrend, right? With that nice strong uptrend, we can see how structure is being built and just going up higher, right? We can see boom, consolidates, boom, consolidates, boom, consolidates, right? So we have these nice little pops, near consolidation, pop, consolidation. And so that's what we're looking at going into this week. Will we see another pop here? Where we start to break above roughly this 225 slash 226 area and start to test up into this 237s, right? Now, because mind you, one thing right now we're trading, or what we have done is filled up a gap from a daily frame, right? We can see right over here, that's the reason why you see that white rectangle, because that is a gap down that had to be filled to the upside, which has now been filled to the upside. And we can see literally the top of that gap was rejected and pushed lower, right? But we're still in this range, still holding this nice little uptrend, staying above that 20 EMA. So that's something that we're watching here on Snowflake, guys. Where we get this pop above there, look at this 1 hour, right? We want to see us pop above roughly Friday's high of that 223s, I would say. Even though our high was 222.63, having that 223 break is giving me more of a confirmation, because here in the after hours we can see that roughly that 223 was right around that high in the after hours. So that's something that we're going to be looking at for Snowflake, is if we can break above that to sort of target that 225, which is going to be last week's high, that 226, right? Now, if worst case scenario, we get a push down, and this is where we want to see us breaking below this 220 slash 229, so potentially target into the 215, 214 area, if given, right? So with that being said, guys, that's going to conclude my weekly watch list. Remember, if you guys like these videos, please like, subscribe, share them, drop a comment of what you would like to see more. End of the day, guys, this is for all you guys especially in the Alpha family. If you guys haven't joined the Alpha family, shoot a DM or whatever to get more info, and let's go ahead and make some money here this second week of July, guys. Thank you guys for joining me. and hope you guys have a great, green, and blessed week.